Welcome, everyone. This is the National Danish Book Club and Literary Event Series. And today we have a very, very special guest, Lisbeth Zornig Andersen, who is the epitome of the American dream. Born in a socio-economically challenged environment, she fought her way up through the societal ladder and managed to earn a master's degree and establish a middle-class life. My name is Desiree Ohrbeck, and I'm a former Danish lecturer at the Scandinavian Studies Department at the University of Washington. National Danish Book Club and Literary Event Series stands on two legs. The book club, hosted by Nita Schmidt, and me, responsible for the interviews. To learn more and see previous conversations and book club discussions, please go to northwestdanish.org. Lisbeth is an activist, a writer, a prolific debater in areas of social policy and marginalized populations, especially children. She's been on the Danish newspaper Politiken's list of the 50 most influential Danish opinion makers. Zornig has published several books, an autobiography, documentaries, and radio and TV shows about her childhood and the underbelly of Denmark. And here I have to put in a disclaimer. This interview today will contain topics about childhood suffering, sexual abuse, and neglect. The abuse and neglect that dominated Lisbeth Zornig Andersen's childhood, as well as the factors that helped her break with her family's social pattern and class, are depicted in her autobiography, Anger is My Middle Name, the book of today's topic. Before becoming chair of the Danish Children's Council, Zornig Andersen had a successful corporate career. The Danish Children's Council is a governmental council fighting for the rights of children and the youth. During her time as chair, Lisbeth contributed to several improvements for the marginalized youth. In 2012, she started Huset Zornig through lectures, conferences, publishing, and by consulting authorities and private companies. House of Zornig is focused on social innovation through research and knowledge within the areas of social policies. In addition, Lisbeth is involved in the democracy campaign, Votes on the Edge, which aims to increase voter turnout among socially marginalized people in Denmark. She's also the founder and chair of the social policy think tank Social Innovations Forum and the founder of the Children's IT Foundation, which provides computers to children placed in out-of-home care. I've skipped actually quite a few things. So if there's anything you would like to add, Lisbeth, please feel free to do this. Do you think I covered this well enough, or is there something you would add?
Oh, well, maybe that I have 5 children, and I'm going to have the third grandchildren in a short moment. So that's a new phase in life, and definitely a beautiful phase. It's so fulfilling to being a grandma. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah. I want to, and I again, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait for this conversation. I think it's so important that, you know, most of the viewers watching this will be from a middle class with like, quote unquote, normal family backgrounds. We all have our issues and circumstances, but I think your message is extremely important. And I'll say that preparing for this interview, I reread your book. I read it when it came out. Must be like 12 years ago now. And I read it in one sitting, and I rushed to my keyboard, and I actually emailed you back then to thank you. So I don't think you have to be to have grown up during with those circumstances you describe in your book to relate to its content. In our lifetime, all of us will come across someone with a life like you had as a kid. And the question is, how do we react? And I cannot recommend your book strongly enough. For some of us, it meant not feeling so lonely with our experiences. For some, they will learn about the circumstances that they have been fortunate enough not to experience. And for others, maybe this will add to develop a compassion, and for all of us to react when we see someone in need. So again, thank you. I am very, very grateful you had the courage to write this book.
Thank you.
And with that, I want to go to my first question. So in her New Year's speech, I think it was last year, the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, the Social Democrat, she said, I am the minister, I'm the secretary of the children. And I was wondering if you compare that to the Article 12 in the Children's Convention, and maybe you would enlighten our readers or our listeners to what that paragraph says. It's basically that kids have rights, right? Where do you see Denmark stand in this when it comes to children's rights?
When compared to a lot of other countries, I think we're in a good position. I don't think the problem for the Danish children is that, that we don't want to support them and take care of them. I think the problem in Denmark is that everyone believes that they are taken care of. So there's a huge blindness about people or children being neglected, because you don't have when you're a caseworker, you don't have the imagine to understand how children today, well, it's obvious some years ago that I was a child, but we still discover families where the children are really suffering and are being neglected, and the caseworkers, the social workers, they are not mean, they are not bad people, they are not undereducated, but I think that our problem in Denmark is that we think that we are the land of milk and honey, and everyone is happy. So it's hard to understand that it can be so bad for children. Yeah. So we are not seeing them.
Yeah, and that might actually come as a surprise to a lot of our viewers, because I mean, Scandinavian countries and Denmark, the new list just came out that we are the second happiest country on Earth.
We're happy, and we don't know. It's, well, what do you call that when you just can't imagine that anyone is feeling bad. So
But Denmark is also one of the countries that has the highest suicidal rate. So there are many things that factors into that survey.
And a lot of if the figures about children who's not thriving, there's 1 of 10 is living in a family with parents who are alcoholic. 1 of 10 suffers from anxiety. 1 of 10, 1 of 6 are experience are getting beaten at home. That's quite large numbers, large figures for a happy country. Yeah,
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So going back to your book, when you set about writing this, what was it that you wanted to achieve with this work?
I was just getting this, what do you call that, appointment. I was selected as the children's ombudsman, or yeah,
That's the same word in English.
and there was this very big case history in Denmark with it was called Brønderslevsagen, where 10 children was they have found 10 children in a house where they have been beaten, and they were starving, and small babies with wounds on their bottom because they didn't get the naps changed, and very, very, very bad.
Diaper rashes. Yeah.
Yes, and I was asked as a chairman. I was asked, will those children, will they ever get a normal life? A journalist asked, and I knew that he was asking a person that was my childhood, and yes, I got a normal life, and I got, well, I think more than a normal and a happy life and a good life, but he couldn't imagine that they could overcome this childhood. And at that time, I decided that I have to tell my story, because those children, they have to know, they need to know that they can, if they get the right support and being seen, and if they want to break the family's pattern, it's possible.
Yeah.
So that was the main cause, and then my husband Michael, he several years he told me that I should tell my story, because it's a crazy story, and I don't look like a person with that childhood.
I don't know what they want. Do they want you to walk around with I've heard that too, and I'm like, so what do you expect, that I'm blue, or like?
Yeah. Many years ago, I told a bit about my childhood. I was in a huge a part of some science about breaking patterns when I was young, and some documentary guy he contacted me and he would like to make a documentary about me, and I met him, and then he said, well, you're not looking it's, we can't see that you are suffering.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But you know what, sometimes you and I have similar circumstances, had similar circumstances. Sometimes I'm like, okay, if I had a different, like, if you see someone with a veil, or hidden away in a burqa, or they have a different skin color, that's very visible, and people for some reason they're like, but you can't tell from looking at you. No, what do you expect? Like, it's so weird that people want to be able to see it, and that's both good and bad, I guess. You can try and be a chameleon when you want to enter into the middle class life, but sometimes it would maybe I've thought it would be helpful to turn the color blue or something when you feel like completely out of your element, or that, okay, this is why I react this crazy or out of the norm. How have you experienced something like that as well?
Just give me 2 glasses of red wine, and then the
Yeah.
girl from Lolland turns up, and it's not pretty. No.
No, it's not pretty. And then you definitely, it's a clash between a way of acting or reacting or being in one class, and then when you're in another class, you're kind of this like animal from the zoo that they are
But
all looking at.
Yeah. I look at the middle class the same way, and that's my problem, because when I get these 2 glasses of or more of red wine, I need to tell them how how small their problems are, and
Well,
yeah.
okay, so I need to ask you something, and it's not in my on my question. So fair warning, you haven't seen this question beforehand. But this is something like, and it might come across as cynical or harsh or whatever to the classes we grew up in. But how do you see? So this is where I stand. I think sometimes that the middle class look at the lower classes, let's just call it that, or people from a socioeconomic challenging background. They look at them like they feel bad for them, but they also judge them. And in my view, everyone should be treated the same, and we should have exactly the same expectations, whether you have dirty clothes or you come from a really bad background. You should not be able to not, if someone sees you and reaches out to you, don't treat them like a client, treat them like an equal. And I think that's also a way to maintain the hierarchy.
Yeah, and that's the children's problem, because you can see on the clothes, and if they are going to gym or playing basketball, or they are not doing anything, and their mobile, their cell phone, there's so much, there's a lot of markers, a lot of ways to see if this children is so that's a big problem, and I think it's bigger now than when I was a child, because the difference between rich and poor in Denmark, and the difference between having a lot of things and having nothing are bigger.
Okay.
My problem with the middle class, when we are talking about them, and forgive me, but my problem is that I'm what do you call that? They're lacking honesty. When I go to Lolland, where I'm from, I normally say that you won't have spinach between your teeth more than a couple of minutes, and you will being told, oh, you have spinach between your teeth. I've been, when I was in the computer business, I could have put on my shirt in wrong way, and I could go with it a whole day, and no one said anything. And then when I came home from job, I could see, well, it's been the wrong way, and no one says anything, but I know that they are talking together when I'm not there about it. So honesty, it would be nice if they could be a bit more honest, and that's maybe what I brought into this debate as in social politics. I think they didn't. Well, I was more honest than a lot of other kind of politicians.
Do you see it as honesty, or do you see it as directness?
Yeah, both, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. I have the same experience, and maybe that's what makes the middle class work in a way with less conflicts. I don't know, but it
Yeah,
could be.
but I get so insecure because I have this low confidence, self-confidence. So, you know, when I can feel, oh, there's something, but they are not saying it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I really need to feel
Yeah.
safe
Yeah.
with people. And often I don't do that because I'm not sure what they really mean.
So going back to your book, Lisbeth, like anger is my middle name. How was and maybe still is anger a driving force for you?
Well, when I was a child, it really what to call that, supported me. It um, beskyttet. Hvad er det på?
Protected?
Yeah,
Protected?
yeah, it was protecting because I was, you know, I was fighting. If something, I was, well, I was fighting, and I had a lot of anxiety, I think, and those two feelings, I think they saved me, because the anxiety did that you know, I didn't, yeah, I was better to protect myself than my brothers. They, you know, they just walked into everything and did dangerous things, and they were really bad at reading people. So that has always been one of my big skills, you know, reading people, and you know, find out, are they dangerous, and shall I fight now, or shall I flee? And you know, so
you had to, when you got home from school, you could probably just turn the doorknob and peeking your head in, you would know what day it was.
Yeah. And you know, I can still, I'm still pretty good at that, feeling, is this a safe space, or are there troubles? Yeah. So yeah, but you know, anger is good in moderate ways.
Moderation,
yeah, because you know, it's not good for your health.
No, and that's what I want to ask you about.
It's eating you up.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally.
Because I mean, I call it combat mode, where you know, that period of you know, maybe not childhood, but youth at least. And then you describe in your book, and I think I saw this in interviews as well, that at some point you all of a sudden felt your body, and you felt your emotions and your mind, and you reckoned with some of the feelings, and it both impacted your physical and mental health. So could you maybe share something about, like, how does a childhood like that, with that much suffering and neglect, impact the body even many years after you are in a safe space?
Yeah, I think that my problem, or you know, I was just working too much, working too hard all the time. I was when I got my master degree, I was 24 in economics, and I had a small child. He was 4 years old. I got him when I was 20, and you know, I was I was just trying to being clever, being the best, and I was like this small car trying to win the race with all the big cars. I was just burning out. And when I was, I think, 38, I was close to dying because I had this stomach disease that I didn't take my medicine. I didn't see the doctor. I didn't do anything because I had this job and I was a project manager in an IT company, and that was more important than taking care of my body. And I couldn't feel it as well, so it wasn't a problem. But
it wasn't a problem. Yeah.
No, until the day that I couldn't feel my legs, and I had to rush to the hospital and get a very, very serious surgery. Yeah. So I think it's common, to neglect your body when you have experienced sexual abuse or has been beaten as a child. One of the coping strategies is not feeling your body.
Yeah, and because if you can feel something and you don't have time or energy, or you can't be home in bed, it's not safe and it won't get you where you want to go.
Yeah. So I see this picture of me, running.
Yeah.
Running until maybe I was 50 or something. I'm 55 now, and it's now I'm almost a bit lazy, and maybe I'll maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't do it, mañana and all that stuff. But but until that, I was just running away from Lolland and from my family and from the underclass. Yeah.
And the thing is, though, and that's one of my later questions, but let's just put it in now. Like, in order to move forward in a healthy way, where you're kind of in it as a person as well, not just as your mind, like you described that at some point, that you have to turn around, face some of the things that you're running away from in order to move forward. How did that, how did you reckon with that, and how did you go about that?
Well, when I wrote my book, it was very therapeutic.
Yeah, therapeutic.
Yeah, because I was, going through everything I experienced. So, I was crying when I was writing. I was crying and crying and crying. And when Michael, my husband, read what I was writing, he was crying while he was editing. Yeah, that. And my editor was crying when she was editing it, and the person who was making the graphic was crying. So it was and for me, it was good for me to cry over little Lisbeth, but it was healing as well that other people were crying. So I will.
Was that because
I will recommend everyone write their story. They don't have to publish it, but writing down to get it out of the system.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that after I had been writing my story, I'm beginning to forget some of the situations. So that's really good. So, I have to look up and read in my book, oh, what was it about this and what school was it? And, so I've been, getting it out of my system.
Yeah, that's it's very fascinating. There are so many things I could ask about, but I want to go back to what you said about other people crying. Do you think it was also because, like, yeah, I did have a tough childhood and no one like did that when I was a kid, but now I'm kind of validated that it's not just me, it was really tough.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure of that before I wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
Really. And yeah, another thing that makes me healing is that if I put my children in my position when I was a child, it breaks my heart, and when I can feel how horrifying it would be for my children being in those situations, being left alone at home, being with ugly men who are abusing you, being afraid of your mother committing suicide, all those horrible things. If I put my children in that and imagining my children in those positions, in those situations, I can really feel it. So that's a way for me to understand how bad it was.
Yeah.
Not seeing me, but seeing my children.
Yeah, that resonates a lot, and
yeah,
I wonder then.
You should try that practice. I know you have children as well.
That's actually when I do that, I become very angry. Because well, I can tell from your book that it feels like you were the kid, but you had to be the adult also. And so I wonder, when you started putting your kids in your position, if it changed your relationship with your mom, because I have a feeling that you had a lot of sorrow and sadness, and like you felt sorry for her like an adult would almost for a kid. But did you feel the same way when you were able to make that like exercise of looking at it through your kids? Because I'm guessing that could change your perspective a little bit, did it?
Yeah, I've been very angry at my mother, but at the same time, I've always felt sorry for her. And, another funny thing, in maybe the last year, I've several times tried to put me in her position. And that's quite hard, because I think she's been, lonely, desperate, afraid, and no one supported her. Well, I did, but I was a child. But so, she's had a really hard time. It doesn't excuse what she put me through, but I can almost feel her loneliness and her afraid, her anxiety.
Yeah.
Actually, I came across a diagnosis recently. It's called PNS, or PNS. It's a kind of extreme what do you call that? Dissociation. If you experience things that are so well, if you're in a traffic accident and you can't remember the accident afterwards, it's the brain has are protecting you from remember that. And one of the symptoms of happiness is that you get this. It's not epilepsy, but it looks like you just disappear, and maybe your body is doing something, but you disappear. And my mother, there were several situations where she was lying on the floor, and we were walking across her. I think I describe it in the book. And she was lying with open eyes, not blinking, and she looked dead, and she was just lying there. And I think that her brain shut down because she couldn't cope with the situation. She was, when she was 24, she was having 4 children in the age of 24, and and this very bad taste in men. So
yeah, well, it's incredible how the body can react, but still nothing changes, even if you're lying there almost like a paralyzed person. But I mean, we survive the best we can, I guess. But it also brings me to the beginning of your book, where you set out to look back through your previous generations in your lineage. And it turns out that there is this generational trauma, like as far back as you can trace. So could you say something about that? And also, how do we break it?
Yeah, I think that for me and my children, it has been a very big thing to understand that the inherit thing that you can inherit, is it called that? Yeah, traumas. We have been looking into epigenetic the last 2 years, my children and I, and we've been talking about, because when I have been writing the first book that you are talking about, and then I made another book, it's called From Anger to Grown Up. When one of my daughters read that book, she had a breakdown, and she was crying, and she said, "I don't understand this, Mom. I have your feelings, but I don't have your experiences." Yeah, so it was really groundbreaking for us to understand that my children are very alert and very they frightened of a lot of things. And I think that they have, it's my feelings and my experiences that that they got and that they are feeling. So yeah, I don't know if I explain it
well, I think it makes sense, because what became clear to me, I'm kind of glad I didn't know before having kids, that I thought the cycle stopped with me. But it doesn't, because there is no normal grandmother, there is no normal uncle or aunt, and there are still reactions from me that probably are not like reactions and acts that you see, in this circle that I travel in now. So it takes, even breaking the multi-generational trauma, even if we do that, it still takes a couple of generations to actually have kids who have grandparents that have like a normal life and who have cousins and so forth. Is that also what you were like going with what you just said?
Yeah, and I have my children, they have been seeing my mother, and I have taken them into that kind of Denmark, Lolland. They have, they know their uncles, and actually, I don't know why, other than it's my family, it's the only it's the only family I have.
Yeah.
So they have met those people, but in a safe space or place. And I think they are happy that I didn't, that they know where they are coming from, and they know my story, and yeah.
And they have realistic like feelings and thoughts, authentic feelings and thoughts, also because they actually know now what they're talking about, as opposed to many middle-class people who they have opinions, but they have never ever sat down next to an alcoholic on the bench.
Yeah. So they know. For example, my brother Tony is the only one who's alive right now, and he has got in this what do you call that? A place for older people. What do you call that?
Retirement home.
Yeah, but he's only 58, but he suffers from dementia because of his drinking, because of alcohol.
Yeah.
And Uncle Tony has been a part of our life for all my children, all their lives.
Yeah.
And they know that he's drinking, and they know that sometimes he wet his pants, and but it's a part of the family, and yeah.
Well, it's interesting though, just to follow up on that how did you, like, you must have gone through a thought process having smaller kids, and then they grow up, how to expose them to that world but still kind of shelter them.
Yeah, it has been what do you call that, trial and error thing sometimes. Well, I think in the book I'm describing an episode where my mother promised not to drink when my two oldest children were visiting her, and she didn't when they were awake, but I hadn't clearly said to her that she was not allowed to drink when they were sleeping. So they couldn't wake her up because she was out of conscious because of her drinking, and well, I went too far there, and yeah.
Well, yeah,
I thought that I could trust her actually at that time, but yeah.
And I guess the interpretation of an agreement were perceived differently between you guys.
Yeah.
That's a way to look at it, right? So I want to ask about also going back to what we started out talking about, like someone saying, like, will they ever make it? Do you have any statistics of, like, if we look at your family, you were the only one out of you guys to break the cycle. Do you ever have survivor's guilt, and what are the statistics on this?
The last thing first, I don't remember the exact figures, but I know it's declining. I know that the odds for breaking the pattern is getting smaller and smaller in Denmark.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Why is that?
yeah, I really I don't know, but I guess could be because of the transparency for children, you know, the social media. They can, you know, I when I compared myself to other at the 6 schools I went to, primary schools I went to, you know, they were, some of them were, you know, middle class, and 1 or 2 were rich, but you know, it wasn't that big gap. But now, you know, I'm happy not being the young Lisbeth now, and able to compare myself with all the other girls who are prettier, clever, have more opportunities, more resources, and stuff like that. So, and it's the school system is getting more, you know, hard to figure out how to get to that that education that you want. It was a bit, it was very much easier when I was young. So it's more difficult to be young, and I think it's the same in the United States. It's more difficult to be young and today, and when it is like that, you know, the vulnerable part of the young ones are more likely to, you know, not making it.
Yeah, they fall through the cracks. And so do you see it as a resource issue, or if we talk about Denmark, how could we change this? I mean, throw a lot of money after kids because it will pay off, but also they need it and they deserve it. But what can we do, like as individuals and as a society?
Yeah, and resources is a part of it. Well, you know, in Denmark we have all those small municipalities, and every municipality, we expect that they are, you know, able to see, discover, see, and support all the vulnerable children. But you know, there are small municipalities, there are huge municipalities, and you know, in the small municipalities there are not there are not enough resources and enough knowledge. So the organization about the most vulnerable children is not perfect right now, I think.
So do you also think it's because they are not as visible? Like if it's older people or more resourceful people who have a need, that will gain attention, and that we can identify more with someone that like had the same kind of lifestyle, but clearly needs our help. And I'm saying clearly because of course they do, but like, is this group also a group that no one really wants to touch like that much? Does that factor in, you think?
Well, in a bad day, I think that people really don't think that it will differ that much, you know. What to call it, you know, the amount of children breaking this pattern declining, as I said.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, well, to what point? And I still think that there are social workers and case workers who really don't think that those children will make it, or, you know, as I did, and getting, well, a simple thing. I was supported financial by the municipality I lived in until I was finished with my master degree. It's not possible today. Today they will support you financially with in I think three years or something from, as you can't get a master on and getting supported. And I don't understand why, because, well, you know, if you want to have a university degree and a master, then you have to study in 5 years, but it's not possible today. And my guess is that they don't think it's realistic.
That's interesting, because it's not just getting the college degree, it's learning how to maneuver in a whole new life. And that is hard. So on a more positive note, then let me like turn the question around a little bit. So why are some kids or young people able to break away from those circumstances? What is it we have? What is that factor? I mean, you describe some of it in your book. I think you have four or five different things, but I wonder if there is like one single anger, maybe, but like your book, but what?
No, I think the most important factor is meeting someone, a person who believes in you. And I met several. That was my luck. Good social workers, really good teachers in the school. You know, I have a bunch of people who believed in me in the school, and where I was the out of home care. Do you call it that? Yeah. And I think that's the most important factor. You know, I don't think. Well, I don't know. Did you meet some special person who was seeing you?
So I had a grandmother who thought I was smart. She was also an addict, but when she was sober, she was very encouraging. And then I had someone within the sect I grew up in. But I also feel like, and I want to turn the question back to you then, like moving forward, if we can call it that, when I look back, I sometimes feel I took advantage of some of those people in order to survive. And I don't think I did in the moment, because it was a survival, but looking back, I'm like, I kind of feel bad about some of the people I used to move away from where I came from. And do you recognize that at all?
Yeah, and I recognize the feeling of being cynical.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm still struggling with is is being able to really have strong connections with people. You know, I can be very loving, very caring, people really feel loved by me. And you know, in the moment I turn around, I've forgotten everything about them. And it's very I used to describe it as a lamp with a broken what do you call that, ledning,
Cord.
yeah. So it blinks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not.
Well, you would fare well in America.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe.
Well, but so on that funny note, unless you have anything you would like to add, I think this is a good place to end. Do you have anything you would like to finish off with?
Well, I will just encourage people to, when they see this little dirty, angry child, just think that it could be you or me, and just give them some really serious hugs and support.
Yeah.
Because yes, they will come back and thank you one day.
They will never forget.
No.
They will never forget. And then they can, if they manage to break the cycle, or just if they don't, they will never forget.
No.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lisbeth. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I can't thank you enough. This was, as you know, very close to my heart, and I hope it still came across professional. But before we end, I would like to thank Scandesign Foundation, Northwest Danish Association, Museum of Danish America, Danish American Heritage Society, and Scandinavian Studies Department at University of Washington for their financial contribution in making the National Danish Book Club and Literary Event Series possible. And to our promotional partners, the Ohrbeck Museum, the National Foundation of Danish America, and the National Nordic Museum. Thank you so much for tuning in, and see you next time.